All right. Welcome back, everyone. This is David Patrick here with Church of the Eternal Logos, and today we are going to have a very interesting and lively conversation with our beloved Subdeacon Mark. How you doing today, sir?
I'm fantastic, Pat. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having a little time to sit and have a conversation today.
You're welcome.
This is for some of the guys who follow me on Twitter are aware of even some of the goings on at our own parish, and that there was recently a mandatory mask issuing policy at the church, and I wasn't very happy about that. And we're going to be talking about, or at
Yeah,
least,
that's an understatement, but that's all right.
yeah. And so I want to give sort of justification and explain why I feel the way I do, and really just rehash a conversation that you and I had last night for well over 2 hours, talking about Orthodox theology. We got into Scripture. You brought multiple theological books, and kind of talked me off the ledge, if you will. And I thought this would be really helpful for a lot of the young guys who
Get back! Oh,
for a lot of the young guys who have reached out to me and also are feeling a little upset that whether they're catechumens or recently joined
right.
the Orthodox Church, that these masks and various parishes issuing mandatory masks, it's way more than just wearing a mask, and they are seeing it from the same sort of perspective I am, as this being symptomatic of a much larger phenomenon, and makes people very worried, and it sort of violates the main reasons of why people are joining the Orthodox Church in the first place, and sort of trying to find refuge from the world. And so you made a bunch of great points last night, and that's why I asked, hey, would you feel comfortable coming on today after church and then after our class? And
Yes.
and
Times three.
yeah, and kind of having the same conversation but publicly.
All right.
So to start, I guess I'll just kind of lay out my reluctance to the mask, and we can start from there. Because you
Right.
made go
It's
ahead.
always good to put out the elephant in the room to help people to see. Um, these are heartfelt uh, feelings that are difficult to sometimes put into words, sometimes not, but they all have to somehow be addressed. Um, and hopefully, we can bring some comfort and um, some perspective to this very, very difficult time that everybody is in. So,
Right, right. Before we get going, I think it should be noted. Check out that amazing microphone you got. Really stepping things up. I know.
I figured if I'm going to be doing this a lot, might as well join the big boys.
I know you got better equipment than I do now. Um, and I want to say to you and your wife Bobby, I really love you guys, and you have been such a blessing and great mentors to myself. That
Thank you.
that you know, and I think I am just representative of a lot of these young guys online who we are taking the faith very seriously. We read the books, we read the church fathers, we try to learn the theology, we try to know the difference, what makes orthodoxy unique. And so when we are seeing, as some of the other guys do, in regards to a larger phenomenon with these masks being related to what we see as a plandemic, I think this has been a great term that's been used. We're not saying that there's not a virus, but we're saying that this is definitely being centrally planned in the way that this stuff is being executed. The sort of double standard with BLM versus, the protest versus the lockdowns, or any Christian gathering, right? Somehow right next to us in the state of Illinois, people have still yet to be able to go to church. Yet BLM protests in downtown Chicago and elsewhere are totally fine. And so for us, we see the mass as being symbolic, or at least at a very low level of this entire thing.
Right.
And
Understandable. I mean,
go ahead.
It's first of all, as I always have to say, as a man under authority, that this is not an officially sponsored talk by the Antiochian Archdiocese
Right.
of North America. I do have my priest permission to do so, because I can't do this just out on my own. I never want to do that. But again, it's two friends, two brothers in Christ, sharing each other. Well, hold on just a second. Did you go somewhere?
No.
I'm off. Where did it go? There it went. My screen just disappeared, and I was like, okie dokie.
That would happen right in the middle of a live stream.
Yeah, right in the middle of a live stream. Was like, not good. But anyway, I hope to be able to bring a little bit of 47 years of perspective. And so Father Athanasius gave me his blessing to come on and talk in a very difficult time without trying to make light of any of the depth of the problems that we have, because they're not fun.
Right.
And it's not a time of yippee yahoo. It's very much a sobering time, and a very scary time. So it is understandable. It is completely understandable. But I wanted to always state that anytime I do this, I have to get permission, which I did, and but it is still not an official podcast of the Antiochian Orthodox Archdiocese. So I have to say that.
Correct. Yeah, this is a hopefully an edifying conversation between two friends. Subdeacon Mark has much more experience than I do in regards to being Orthodox, living the Orthodox lifestyle, and that's why he was very helpful in our conversation last night. It's not that I've changed my mind about these masks, and that's what we're going to get into, but how, again, we approach and try to deal with this from an Orthodox perspective was very insightful in our conversation last night, because my immediate response was, I'm not putting it on. My parish that I actually really love, I love going to church, is now going to force people to wear a mask, which is not a state order. It's not state mandated, and it's not mandated by the hierarchy. And my initial reaction was, I'm going to leave and go to a different parish. And we had a conversation. So we're going to get into authority and all this different stuff. But first, maybe it'd be helpful again for me to lay out how I see these masks and how a lot of these young guys who are messaging me and asking me what to do.
Yeah, and I understand, because you've told me that some of these people have stopped their catechumenate, which is unfortunate, that people are afraid, that people are not knowing what to do, feeling like a lack of direction, feeling like the rug has been pulled out from under their feet by the Orthodox Church, and that she has wimped out and left people holding the bag, and they're very hurt and frightened. Did I state that about correctly?
Pretty much, yeah. That is exactly it. And no, that's pretty much spot on. So
I try.
So for me, these masks, again, my objection is not the physical wearing of the mask. That is very simple to get over. I've worn a mask before. To me, this is much more than that. It is really the world, in my mind, infiltrating into the church. And the mask, as we know, most people are wearing surgical masks. They're not even wearing an N95 mask. I
don't have one.
Yeah. And they are, totally terrified of this virus that we know has a 99% survivability rate. So despite what the fear and despite what we were told, things for example, the whole lockdown was initiated because of a 14-day, a 15-day period. That was all. That was all it was going to be. And me and other people, especially within the Orthodox, I would highlight Jay Dyer, who he's been talking about this, and he's been very accurate in his coverage. That this was not going to be for 15 days. This is a global revolution. This is something that's way larger. And from my perspective as an Orthodox Christian, I see it as sinister. I see it as demonic. I see it as really a satanic globalist movement. And the mandating of these masks after the BLM protest, after we know that the death rate isn't what it was, after we're finding out the CDC and various places are cooking the books and having numbers inflated, having people that have died from motorcycle accidents being counted as COVID cases. And then the cases, that's why they moved from focusing on deaths to cases, because they're testing for antibodies. So you and I and anybody who's been exposed, the natural immunological response is to build antibodies. So now you are actually resistant to COVID. Now, maybe you had the flu or flu-like symptoms for a few days, but now once you have the antibodies, you're good to go. This is the way immunology works. And the fact that that's what they're testing for, and if you just have the antibodies, well, that's considered a case. I see all this. I find it very manipulative. And when the mandatory masks then enter into church, which I find as a refuge against the world, it broke my heart. It broke my heart because, one, I feel some of it is actually out of fear. And I struggle with the fact that I have secular friends. I have friends that are atheists or whatnot. They're not as afraid of this virus as people who are talking about Christ and going to church. And I don't want to, because I know that, again, this probably isn't a very Orthodox thing, to question anybody's faith or commitment. But to make decisions out of fear, I find to be the wrong avenue. And so the fact that I see these masks as being satanic of a larger globalist movement of getting people to do irrational things and then to normalize that in society, this is just a prerequisite for a sort of psychological programming for, again, I think a vaccine is coming. I think much more, many more requirements are going to be implemented on people in the name of public health. And so we can start there, and I'll let you go. But I know for myself and many of the guys, we see these masks as being symbolic of something sinister, something that is centrally organized, and something that is opposition to what we believe would be God's will. And so maybe respond to that in regards to then seeing these in the church.
Just that? You want me to respond to just that?
No, well, we can continue, or wherever you want to go. But I just wanted to.
I'm just teasing you. I probably shouldn't. It was just just that. You want me to respond to just that? Okay. Got a couple hours?
Yeah.
No, but thank you, because you, I think, are expressing very well what a lot of people are feeling or believing. Okay. First of all, from my perspective, first of all, I am conservative. And I'm naturally suspicious of what is going on. I don't like what I see. I don't trust what I see coming out. So in many ways, you and I are, as we have talked, on the same page.
Right.
That when I see BLM out there doing all of this and acting the fool, then I am disheartened, hurt, and I can become fearful as well as to what the next shoe drop is going to be. Because, and while I don't share all the same concerns as you, in which we very openly talked about, that's okay.
Right, and that's the nature of our relationship. I mean, we are extremely open, and I think that's why we have kind of built a very strong friendship in a very quick period of time.
Because it doesn't have to be. It always drove me crazy when people had to believe exactly alike on every little thing. Otherwise, you can't be my friend. And I was going, hey? Well, shoot, if you want somebody to believe exactly like you, well, then have a friendship with you. Nobody's stopping you. But other than that, good luck. Because people are unique, distinct, and unrepeatable, and have different life experiences, different sets of fears as to what affects them, what doesn't. Uh, and last night, I know that we had a great conversation. You know, with some 2 fingers of whiskey, and in your case 3, and I had 1. That's right. uh, but then getting on the phone with another friend and discussing until the light was just gone. We're out there literally in the dark, and we can't see each other anymore.
Yeah.
I think we finished about what 10:30.
Yeah. I think it was from 8:30 to a little past 10 o'clock. We were really trying to get serious and work and find a compromise and work this out.
Right. And I think we came to a working relationship. Right. I will put it that way on this.
Right.
Which was good, because one of the first things we have to understand in the Orthodox Church is, are we teachable? As I pointed out, I said, you are a catechumen, which is great. That's not a bad thing. This is a good thing. But it does mean someone who is learning.
Right.
And we appreciate obviously what you're doing and the stances that you're taking online and the forcefulness of which you're doing it. And these are all good, but there were some things that I was picking up on that I kind of went, might need a little tweak here and there to help you, not as so much as correction as to kind of fill you out a little bit on a little bit of Orthodox theology surrounding things like this. Mm-hmm. And so we began, and you thought I was going to go with the whole nature of hierarchical authority and this type of thing, and surprise! We didn't go there. Until very late. It was one of those kinds. I said, "This is now. Here's the afterthought, or just kind of a addendum," and then I brought that in. But to me, that is not what drives anything like this, nor should it drive anything like this. Unlike church authority in the West, where you have the Bible driving the Protestant authority, and you have the Pope and the cardinals driving the authority in the Roman Church. That's not quite the way that the Orthodox Church operates. We don't start with authority. We start with theology. We start with our relationship with Christ. Who do we know Christ to be? How do we experience Christ? What does that mean? What are some of the when I became an Orthodox Christian, I didn't come in clean. I came carrying loads and loads of baggage and garbage and stuff that I had brought over from being an American, which I love being an American. But the mindset, the phronema and how we see the world is different than how I had been raised to think. And so that's not a any type of denigration towards you. It is just a fact that this is what happens to us, that we can't escape it. This is part of living in a society, no matter what society it happens to be. We are going to have the way we see the world, the way we touch the world in a particular way. And when we become catechumens and are forced to see Christ in a new way in the church, we also are called to see the world in a different way. And that takes a lot of getting used to. I have now been in the Orthodox Church for 47 years. But during that time, I had a lot of struggles and a lot of things that I didn't get right, that I was absolutely sure I was 100% dead on, and this is the way it is, and you're not listening to me, and all these things, until later on I had to go, oops. And being oops is okay. In the Orthodox Church, actually being oops is like, okay, you learn something. And we're called to, be one in Christ, and to have our minds be renewed in Christ. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that doesn't mean this all news. It also means this thing. And we are to be renewed by what we learn. The point is that Christ is, as a person, is the truth. And in that personhood, that truth expands out in so many ways that it takes a lifetime to learn. So we appreciate the warrior spirit. And I love your whole thing. There's no place to hide. You have a warrior spirit. And first of all, as you know, I am pretty much in agreement with you of maybe what's going on.
Right.
Maybe. But there is, I want to kind of start this a little place different, but something that I thought of later on today when we're talking, and that is something called, in Ezekiel 3:8, we see a scripture called the watchman. And in that Ezekiel 3:8, there is a warning from a watchman that said, well, let me just grab it real quick here, because I hate misquoting things. You know how that is. All right. If I can do this. It's funny, but for all these years that I was a Protestant and I learned the Bible real well, when I got into the Orthodox study Bible, things are in different places. Yeah. They actually move things. And I'm going, that ain't, this was next to this, not necessarily. So, hold on a second here. I do apologize. This is always good listening when you see somebody looking up things, because it really, really helps. Hold on a second here.
So it'd be in the 1190s as Ezekiel in terms of page numbers. Yeah. What chapter? I can read it for you if you want, if you know the chapter and verse.
Well, that's what you do best, for me, is you find things and read them, yeah, go ahead. I've got it right here, but go ahead.
What is it?
Oh, you want that again? Ezekiel 3:8. See, this is why I keep you around.
I'm glad I can be helpful. So
you're welcome. Yeah, I know.
Ezekiel 3:8 reads, "Behold, I have made your face to be strong against their faces, and I will strengthen your case against their arguments. Your argument shall be continually stronger than a rock. Do not be afraid of them, nor be dismayed at their faces, for they are a house
like the right one.
of provocation." Now that's Ezekiel 3:8.
Well, anyway, that was good. That worked. Funny how that happens. Sometimes providence just kind of fits in. But my Ezekiel 3, well, maybe I missed, maybe it's 13:8 or something, but maybe I just, but was the warning from a watchman. And that God has set out a watchman, like a watchman on the ramparts of the walls of Jerusalem. And in it, he says that you will warn the wicked man from his way. And if you do not warn the wicked man from his way, that he will die in his sin, but his blood will I require from your hand. In other words, we are called to be each other's watchmen. So this is why I don't get upset with people that are trying to be watchful on this stuff. We need that. We need people to go, whoa, 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 whoa. This smells funny. This doesn't sit right. And that is the warning from a watchman. And if we ignore it, we will die in our sin. In other words, we get creamed by it. But if the watchman says nothing, then our blood will God require at their hands.
Somebody in the chat just found the verse. It is chapter 3, but it begins with verse 16.
16.
Yeah, and it says, "Again it came to pass after 7 days that the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, I made you a watchman for the house of Israel.
Thank you.
And you will hear a word from my mouth, and shall threaten them from me. When I say to the lawless, you shall surely die, and you do not give me explicit warning, nor speak to warn the lawless to turn from his ways, so he may live, that lawless man shall die in his unrighteousness, but his blood I will require at your hand."
Okay. So we need watchmen on the ramparts. So in other words, what they're saying is like a watchman on the ramparts of the walls of Jerusalem. That we need people to warn us. Wake up, wake up. A watchman is there at night going, wake up, wake up, wake up. I get this. Now here's where it gets interesting. That all these people, quote, watchmen, could see things that others could not. And that is fine. But unless I misread the world completely, I do not know the future with certainty. Never have. That's something that I've had to experience one step at a time as I go. I cannot 100% say that this or this or this or this will happen, or that this is this definitely this. It may smell funny, or that this is definitely this and this is definitely this, and therefore make and draw conclusions that it is so, without possibility for different understanding, different interpretation of what things are going on, and not just trying to be blind to the situation and wake up, don't you see this? What's wrong with you? Everybody take a deep breath.
Right.
And
may I say that for me, I am open that I may be wrong about this stuff, but I out of good conscience can't participate in what I believe to be evil.
Right. And so this is where we came in.
Right.
And, what was that song by the Bee Gees? This is where I came in. That nobody is asking anybody to do something that they believe to be evil.
No, but mandating it.
Yeah, if you understand it from a different perspective.
Right.
So what we want to do is, first of all, we have to understand that the human church, as you know, Father wanted me to mention as we're standing outside talking about this after church, and that the church is, first of all, a church of people that are fully human. We do not automatically escape the things of this world, the pandemics, the diseases, the accidents, the things that will kill us. Nobody gets out of this world alive.
Right.
Nobody gets out of this world alive. We are all subject to death, and therefore the things of this world do fully affect the church. There have been times, if I'm not mistaken, that the churches have closed before during times of pandemics. But I'd have to go, but that is what many a learned person has told me. I have not personally looked it up, so don't kill me. It's just I just wanted to say that so it's maybe not the first time in history, but this sure is something that nobody had a playbook for. That when this began to happen and people saw the death rates just whoosh, that there was great alarm, great concern, and great somewhat hysteria, that gripped the world at that point. I was like, what is this thing? What, is this just going to keep going? Is this just going to just wipe everybody out? And nobody knew what in the world to do. Our beloved bishops were in the same position. They didn't have a playbook on the world. They didn't go, oh, well, next Tuesday we're going to start pandemic, and in my Orthodox bishop book, it says to respond this way. They had nothing like that. They were forced to deal with us on the fly as much as anybody else. So we understand that human nature, we don't, just because we're Christians, we're not able to escape the pandemic just by being Christians. If I believe hard enough, it won't touch me, and all these, things which in the Protestant church you hear, that if one believes strong enough, then, the pandemic will, because, 10,000 may die at your right hand, 1,000, but, no arrow shall come unto me, I'll be safe, and then they get the disease and they die, and everybody's wondering, well, you didn't have enough faith, or all this other garbage that comes in. So I do not ascribe to that. Now, that doesn't mean that God is not with us. But the church is fully human. But the thing that I approached you with yesterday, when we're dealing with this, is we've got to start looking at this from a position of Orthodox theology, first of all, of salvation, of what Christ came to do, how we are saved. Now, the other thing is that you cannot hold the church as an idol. I heard you say that people wanted to use the Orthodox Church as a refuge. It is a refuge for our soul, but it is not a perfect idol. It is not a perfect organization. You know how I know this? I'm in it. And if I'm in it, we have problems. Okay? Flat out, Mark's in, we got problems now. That the Orthodox Church is made up of people who are saved, being saved, and will be saved people, but who are just as fallen as anyone else, just as subject to the nature, the problems and things of this world as anybody else. That means we can make bad decisions, wrong decisions, even in some people's minds, sinful decisions. So if you're looking to have the Orthodox Church as your refuge away from the world, you're going to be sadly mistaken and disappointed and misinformed. It's not what the Orthodox Church was meant to be. Can't be that. That isn't to say that there are not options and help within the Orthodox Church, and that doesn't mean that the Orthodox Church is not the Orthodox Church. It does not mean that this is not the Church of God, the Church of Christ and His people. But I've heard people say, well, I'm going to go to ROCOR. I was in ROCOR for 10 years. So I kind of got a handle on that group of Orthodox Christians. And many of those things in there are very good. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going into church bashing, right. But they've got their own problems. Believe me. That made me crazy at times from a theological, spiritual point of view. Okay?
May I say that, and I'm not, because I mentioned to you about ROCOR as well, and it's because of, again, their strong condemnation of BLM. They came out and actually compared the movement to the Bolshevik Revolution, which was refreshing considering what people have seen with OCA and the Greek Orthodox Church. And
you're not, no disagreement.
Right, no, we're not in disagreement there. And then certain ROCOR parishes have stayed open during the pandemic. They did not social distance. They did not wear masks. They continued as normal. And I was mentioning to you, it's like that was the kind of community I felt like I was looking for. I feel like I'm looking for. And even though they may have theological, there's problems in all the different parishes, every single church, every single jurisdiction,
Right.
but I feel like we're at war right now. And so the way that communion has been made illegal in Toronto, the way Catholics are absolutely being persecuted in America right now, their churches are being set on fire. We just saw, an amazing church in France burn yesterday. That Christianity is under attack.
Under fire.
And it is right, and not seeing people, like, where are the bishops? And I'm not just talking about Orthodoxy. I'm just speaking generally in Christianity. It just seems like it's only the lay people. It's only like some personalities online that are really speaking out. And then, so related to all this, the mask for many people is symbolic of this larger agenda.
Right.
Yeah, and then as soon as that comes in, and it's even a symbol itself. Dr. Fauci said that it's a symbol because he was confronted with the science of these masks, and he said, well, it's more of a symbol of being a good person and a good citizen. And that's exactly why I and others do not want to engage with it, because it's a symbol. It's a submission ritual.
And I'm there with you.
Right.
You know this.
Right.
On those particular things, I am lockstep in place. But here's some of the realities within that broken, fallen church that our leaders, our fearless leaders, must deal with. There are pastoral concerns, legitimate pastoral concerns, that every priest and every bishop has to take into consideration. And first of all, we don't know. I want to address two things. I want to address the fear, and I want to address the pastoral concerns and the response to fear. Okay. First of all, everybody is going, well, these people are afraid. These people are afraid. They're terrified they're going to die. Yeah, some of them are. And for those who have probably had a loved one who's died from it, that fear is even more profound and more worrisome, because some people, or many people, have. Now, it's one of those things, you can have a 99% survival rate, but if you're the one, it doesn't make you feel any better. So I understand, especially our church has many elderly people who are, well, wait a minute, that's me, who kind of look like, somebody who is at great risk, because they are at great risk, compared to somebody like yourself. I'm 65 years old with a lung condition. Yeah, that doesn't work out real well sometimes if you get this thing. But yet, I understand the hysteria and the hype and all the other things that I've seen behind the scenes that make me very nervous about it. However, when we are dealing with pastoring, when we are dealing with those who are afraid, that doesn't mean they are no longer Orthodox Christians or deserving of our concern and our pastoral care. They have to be. They are the weak ones amongst us. And if we just simply do the macho thing, well, just buck up, Bucky. You'll be fine. Just don't worry about it. But I'm afraid I'm going to die. Oh, you silly goose. Don't you understand that this is a worldwide thing against you? But I'm afraid. Well, let me show you how to be not afraid. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
It works. It is counterintuitive. It makes them feel worse. It makes them not want to come to church for the Eucharist. It makes them afraid, more afraid to do this. It makes them more afraid to gather as the body of Christ. And so while we say, well, they shouldn't be this way. Okay, they are. Now what do? As a pastor, as somebody who has been charged with their souls, whether or not they're weak, wrong, blind, dumb, we are still called to be the pastor for them. Mm-hmm. And they deserve the loving embrace of Christ. It is part of the Orthodox Church. It is part of the Church of Jesus Christ to do so. He didn't come for the strong and the wise, but the lowly, the weak, the hurt, right, the scared. That's who he came for. This is who we are called to embrace and help. And they say, well, how does it help to by wearing a mask? Well, as you said, Dr. Fauci, very good. I agree that, but it is symbolic. Do not underestimate symbol.
I agree, and I'm worried that this is symbol. It perpetuates fear, and then
I don't know if it perpetuates, because here, more and more people in our church showed up for Eucharist today.
Sure.
Because people were wearing masks.
Sure.
So I'm going, I'm going. Okay, well, that in my macho mind, I'm going. Well, that's dumb. So this is what it took you to get here. But at the same time, those people deserve it. Now, on the other side of the coin, okay, mm-hmm, people are talking about these people who are in fear. And then I hear, well, even you yourself said, and everybody I hear, I'm afraid that this is the first step for the takeover of the church. I'm afraid that this is a one world government that's going to come in. I'm afraid that this is going to happen. I'm afraid this is going. I'm afraid this is going. I'm afraid this is going. I am afraid. You're afraid. On the other side, I'm not denigrating your fear. I'm not poo-pooing your fear. It could all well be. The only issue is it hasn't happened yet. It may be symbolic of these things, but our fears are what are informing both sides.
But I agreed, and this was a really good point that you made last night. However, when we talk about, well, it hasn't happened yet, right next to us in the state of Illinois, they haven't been able to go to church since this began.
And we understand who's in charge there. And so, again, there was this old adage in Nazi Germany where I wish I could, one of the problems of growing old is your brain just does not work when you call on it like it used to. Hey, Bobby, would you please bring me my set of quotes for me? I left them in the other room. And also, but this was a man, starts with a B, and I can't remember. But anyway, if somebody's online and can remember this, my brain would be grateful to you. That during time of Nazi Germany, he said, when they came to shut down the unions, I didn't care because I wasn't a member of the union.
Right.
When they came to shut down the churches, I didn't care because I didn't go to church. When they came to take over this industry or that industry or arrest those who I disagreed with, I didn't care because it didn't affect me. And he went on and on until he said, and finally, when they came for me, there was nobody left.
Exactly.
So we've seen how totalitarianism works. We've seen it before.
And that's why for me being so vocal about these masks, it's not about putting the mask on. It's about where are we going to resist all this stuff? Where are we going to stand up?
And to me, that is not we're not at that point. That's not to say that, well, they didn't come after me this time. No. Again, I think that what we have to understand what our pastors did was not out of fear, but out of trying to get people to the cup of Christ. And so when we make or say things that we disagree with, and assign unto them motives, there's where I have a problem. Assign unto them motives that are evil and wrong
the people
and terrible.
The people implementing the masks?
No. The people that are opposing the use of masks, that say the reason that the church is doing this is they're kowtowing to fear, and they're falling into the plan of these evil men, and they're just not standing up for what is true, and they're doing all these motives and reasons rather than maybe some of the most logical, like Occam's razor, that which it might just be pastoral.
Right. No, and I understand that. We discussed it last night, and and that's where it's like we have to find a middle ground, because I'm not going to put it on because I do want to draw the line, and I want to be a voice that's speaking out right now, because it doesn't seem like people are. And that's what, I know many of these people that are watching right now live in the chat they're wanting people to speak out, especially within the church. And I understand Father's position in regards to the salvation of other people.
And you were very sympathetic with what he had to do.
Yes, because I'm sympathetic if they want to wear. I do not want to tell anybody they can't wear a mask. It's that the mandating of the mask to enter church is really, for me, it's towing the line of then prerequisites for the sacrament themselves. I don't see a distinction between plastic spoons, although, of course, our hierarchy has already spoke out against the use of plastic spoons. But it, in a theoretical situation where they hadn't, I don't see a difference between any argument on the practicality and safety of using plastic spoons as being any different from the use of these masks.
And here's the point. It may not. It may not. All right? Mm-hmm. And nobody is going to, well, at least this nobody, is going to really argue that point.
Uh-huh.
I am not in favor of mandatory mask wearing. That is not something I agree with. So you're going to find no argument from me on that.
Right.
It is not something, but I wanted to go back to the fear, because it is what drives the argument on both sides. The thing that Satan would love to do the most is to split this church right down the freaking middle.
Right.
And not over a theological issue. Oh, shoot, no. Masks and no masks. And have the Holy Church of God be divided. And people are saying, well, I'll just go to the worker. It's still the church. Well, you know what you're saying? If you leave one parish to go to another. Historically, first of all. What is the Orthodox response to this? And this is where we're getting. What is the Orthodox response? For the first 1,800 years of the church, if you left your church, you had no other. If you went to the point of where you said, I disagree with what my bishop did, I'm going to take my ball and go home. Well, you went home. There was no place else to go. And you say, well, that's not the case today. And that's exactly my point. This is a very new phenomenon, and one that is born out of Protestantism. The whole notion, if I disagree, I've got my conscience within me, and this is what my conscience is my guide, and I've got to go with it. First of all, the Orthodox Church tries to teach us an ecclesial conscience. That sometimes what I think is absolutely airtight and right, sometimes I found not so much later. Because sometimes I found out that I forgot to think about this or that. And I've had to eat humble pie because, can you imagine me eating humble pie? First of all, can you? But it's true that I had to eat crow because it was so certain, and that the Orthodox Church is not a group of individual consciences or consciousnesses. Is that a word? But it is an ecclesial, conciliar body. It is something that, and this is one thing that they do expect the church to live in. But besides that fact, there's still understanding of that. I hate it. I had it in my mind, and then I went on a little rabbit trail, and I hate that. I wanted to talk. What did I say about the fear? Oh, take my ball and go home.
Right. And Matt, before you go ahead,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that just because it was there was a historical inability to go to a different Orthodox church, to me doesn't mean that I shouldn't if my church starts mandating things that I believe to be really
Saint
rooted.
Isaac the Syrian. This is something I brought up to you last night.
But just
Saint Isaac the Syrian.
I know, but I'm just saying that given that we have that ability in America, sure, I understand it's sort of a spiritual supermarket mentality that's rooted in a Protestant paradigm.
It is precisely rooted in Protestantism.
But for some people, they're just looking for the real church, and I know that this
is. And here's the point.
For people who
now I know what I was going to say. Thank you very much. That when you turn your back on a local community, the whole notion of that local community as not living up to your expectations, we enter into a very dangerous non-Orthodox mindset.
Okay.
What we do is we are called, and this is why, see, don't you love this? Everybody thinks, well, God, they're fighting, but they don't know us very well.
No, they don't.
It's like iron on iron, sharpening everything around us. That those people did it again.
Well, we were talking about the supermarket mentality, and I was talking about the real church. You were talking about leaving a local congregation.
Yes, and this is what we're called to do: the Orthodox phronema mindset. And this was the way the church had to live, because it was designed to be this way. That you are to stay within your local place and fight like hell.
Right.
You are to not go, if you didn't, most people even couldn't, but in some ways was good, you didn't pick up your Maximus Confessor. I've already had one arm cut off, the other, and they're coming after my tongue. I'm going to run. Because, enough is enough. They are really failing at this. They're not being the body of Christ at all. And so I'm just taking up I'm going somewhere else. Athanasius was exiled 5 times. St. Gregory Palamas was excommunicated before he was made a bishop. The Orthodox Church history is ugly and really messy because, again, people like me are in it.
Right.
It is not a refuge from the world so much as it is the place where we go to fight the world. We're in it, but not of it.
Well, that framework, and I know that this isn't exactly what you're saying, but again, if we're fighting the world, participating in mandatory mask for a virus with a 99% survivability.
Weapons are not the same weapons as the world.
Agreed.
So our weapons are what? Love, joy, peace, long suffering, patience. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
That we are called to die. Sometimes the Orthodox Church, I'm sure that the Orthodox Church during the Russian Revolution was not a happy camper.
Right.
That their people were being rounded up and thrown into gulags.
Well,
and some were able to escape. And it doesn't mean that Orthodox Christians always died. Some ran, some escaped, some couldn't. And some did the fight from within. The Orthodox Church wants us to be rooted. Now, there's one handout. This is what I'm trying to have all my things handout. And this is what I gave to you on your phone. I sent this to you on your phone. And I think this will be at least helpful in understanding where we approach the church differently in the East and West. Just the approach of it. And I'm trying. I know I had all these. I'm just trying to find the pictures because I got little pictures I can put up and show you. There we go. It's just I have 17 copies and they're all laid in there funny. Okay. This is kind of a diagram, and I want everybody to see this. Okay, let me back up. Can you see it better that way? Can you read it?
I doubt people are able to read it.
Well, I want you to see this diagram, and then I'll
of God, and then the plus and minuses as the church.
Right.
Yeah.
That this is the way we join the church, and this is what we bring into orthodoxy, the mindset of what the church is and what it is not, and this is something from the West that we bring in. And this is a typical American understanding of Christian and his relationship with the church. You have God. Triune God. See it? Very, very triune. For those of you who don't think that you're Trinitarian, I just want to show you triune God there, right there. See that? And what you do is you have a personal, private commitment to God as a Christian.
Right.
Zap. Straight line. Then the way you do that, being a Christian does not demand one to be a member of a local church, but he or she can choose to join one, and whatever one she wishes. This decision usually is not understood to require a personal commitment to the pastor. Did you hear that? A personal commitment to the pastor or others in that particular Orthodox church one attends. So therefore what we have is you have God is got relationships with all the people with pluses and all the people that are nothing, and those are nominal Christians, and the negatives are those in the church body that are really not Christian. Mm-hmm. And this is the way that we see that God works with, and you have a pastor who may or may not really be a Christian right here. And so God works with just those particular individual Christians in this church. This is the typical understanding of how you join the church. And this is where I'm going, but you'll see I think you'll see where I'm going with this. Now, the typical American understanding of the local church. The church is primarily in America, I love to say America, is a place one attends. As back in the 60s, we had this thing, attend the church of your choice. You attend and you confess Christ, maybe doctrine, maybe not, depending upon your church, because as you know, love unites and doctrine divides. But to receive the sacrament, it's my time to come up and get my yummies. I'm going to receive the sacrament, and I kind of learn spiritual things here, and I'm going to get psychological support here, counseling, and I'm going to serve Jesus and get my spiritual needs met and make me feel happy and secure and good and yummy and warm and cozy. Tell me if I'm wrong. Now, the typical American understanding of requirement to be a part of a local church. You have to, now you're going to laugh at some of this, Patrick, because first of all, you have to attend. Second line on this, I can see that it's pay dues.
Is this simony?
I knew we had that discussion this morning. I knew it'd get you. Anyway, and profess belief in Christ, and perhaps a statement of faith, and that have been baptized in some places, or profess Christ in baptism because it's my personal, what's the word they use? Testimony. My personal testimony by being shown I'm being baptized, which is one of my siblings' church's way of thinking. Now, the typical American understanding of the nature of the local church, and this is where I'm going. A part. The church is a part, but not the whole of the church. The church is a part of the whole. Only a compilation of all the local churches make up the whole. And denominations can make up the whole church, but the whole church is fractured and splintered into, so the church is all divided now. Okay? You see how that works there? Mm-hmm. As each individual is understood to be in Christ, regardless of to whom or whom one expresses his faith. Each individual is a church to himself. Each individual is a church unto himself. If you are a believer, one who's made a, i.e., a commitment to Christ, you are a member of the church. This ethereal church. The local pastor of a local church adds nothing definitive to what it means to be church. A group of Christians can be without a pastor, and as long as they believe in Jesus, they are a church. And what is the famous line? Where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the problem is that in Orthodox eyes, the church is in its locality, the church, the fullness of the church. Each locality is such. And by saying that I can't go there, you are making an individualistic decision that somehow this church, this local church, is deficient to the point of not being the whole church. That they are somehow deficient according to your eyes and have ceased to be the church. That in Orthodoxy, each and every single local Orthodox church is the fullness of the church. Mm-hmm. And when we decide that that is not enough for me, we in effect are making a theological statement. And that theological statement is not orthodox. It is taking into us a Western understanding of what it means to be church. And therefore we don't see that a relationship with our pastor is part and parcel with being a Christian. And when we then boppity 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 bop around, or for whatever, just bop, that can be a real evidence that something is amiss within us, that something, either our understanding or our spirit or something, there is some idol I'm holding on to that is preventing me from seeing the presence of Christ in his each and every local Orthodox church. And this, to me, is one of the dangers, primary dangers, of what we're seeing today. How do then we make somebody feel better about that? Okay. Well, first of all, we're wrestling not against flesh and blood,
right,
but against powers, principalities, evil forces in high places, which is true. We are. But each and every Orthodox local church is called to do that. The best that they can, given what that local pastor is dealing with within his own church, as being somebody who is to care for the weak. And we know in Scripture the whole notion of what Paul said about eating meat. And when I read this to you last night, I took out the word meat and placed in wear a mask.
right.
Because Paul doesn't just say, well, that's just the eating of meat. That's not what Paul said. He said, eat meat or do anything by which will cause my weaker brother to stumble. This places an onus upon the pastor. This places a different paradigm, a different phronema, a perspective that he has to deal with. That is one that I may not agree with. But I have to understand that he must deal with it. And he has got to deal with it in a way that is Christ-like. And go out and be Christ to the weak one. And I may disagree, and you and I talk. I think it's a wrong decision. You know that I do.
Right.
And I told Father Athanasius as such. But I also said, but this is why you get the big bucks, because I don't have the grace for that. I get to stand down here as a lowly subdeacon and go yap, 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 yap. And he's got to make that gut-wrenching decision.
Right.
Whereas, Father Athanasius, what do you think his personal preferences lie?
Right. Well, after church today, we talked, and Father has much sympathies with my perspective. And that's what I was trying to say, that I have sympathies with the predicament he has. Of course, I can't ultimately know the pressure that he's under, and the other parishioners who are contacting him.
Our bishops.
Right. And but one of the things that was very helpful last night was you're talking about fighting like hell within the church. And so from that
perspective, can I say dang? Is that the word I can use? Dang.
Yeah.
Dang right.
And so from that,
because here's what: if you leave, remember I said I left for a little while, went to the EOC, and I felt much better spiritually. I felt like these people were being much more Orthodox than the Orthodox Church.
Right.
And what did I ultimately learn through all of this?
That it wasn't.
I told you last night.
Yeah, ultimately it wasn't Orthodox, and you weren't being Orthodox.
Ultimately, it wasn't Orthodox, and two, ultimately, it did nothing to help the Orthodox Church. That every bit of wisdom I had gained over years could not be said to anybody in the Orthodox Church because I wasn't within it.
Right.
The Orthodox Church always calls us to fight from within.
Right.
To sit there and go, yeah, okay, it's screwed up, so fight. It's screwed up, so pray. It's screwed up, so get on your knees. So be Christ to your brothers and sisters in that local church. Lift them up in prayer. Talk to them. Help them understand. Help their fears. Pray with your brothers and sisters. Put your arm around them. Say, I know you're afraid.
6
I'm
feet.
afraid
6 feet.
to
6
other
feet.
things. What?
6 feet. Can't put an arm around them.
Oh, well, virtually.
But
you know what I'm saying.
No, I do, and that advice was very good, because I am not the only one at our parish who feels the exact same way that I do, and I'm trying to talk to you about. And so there's one gentleman didn't even come to church today. Another gentleman, and he's watching. Shout out to Stephen, one of our fellow Ortho Bro brothers. Him and his family. He's got 2 beautiful children, a beautiful wife. And they are him and his wife are exactly on the same page, the same thing that I'm talking about. And of course,
in other words, Father Athanasius can't win.
Right. But and that's why, again, then instead of trying to find a quote unquote more based parish, we emphatically voiced our opposition to what's going on, and Father,
which was allowed, if you notice. It was totally allowed.
Right. And Father made a compromise. We, just to share with everybody else, we ended up sitting in the fellowship hall in his office, which is separate from the fellowship hall, by ourselves, totally removed from the rest of the church, and watching service on a TV. But we didn't have to wear a mask, and people saw that we weren't wearing a mask, and Father even said that people were already complaining about that, but he is willing to put up with that, and he's willing to fight for that.
Yeah, because I was there when that was brought up.
Right.
Because, and you know what I told him? I said, how did that affect you? Were you in there with them? Well, no, but they're infecting Father's office. And I want to understand, but there are times when people are going to bring up whatever they want to bring up to try to bolster people to their point. And sometimes you just have to say no. So I said, look, you have zero contact with them. They're not infecting his office. Not one of them in there has COVID. The chance of them having COVID and infecting his office and you going in and picking up are astronomical. Right. Don't drive your car because you're going to get in an accident, and you got a far greater chance of dying in your car than that.
Right.
So, they didn't like it. But, it's like one of those, well, I'm sorry. Right. But the point is you were isolated, but we tried to include you. And what was my point is if you could not. What was my advice to you if you could not? To then get your protest signs out, go stand out there with picket signs, church unfair, church unfair. Or what was my advice at this point?
Well, last night you mentioned, to voice my opposition, which our brother Stephen already had. Father had made an accommodation, and he turned out to be much more sympathetic to our position. But you said
trying to be pastoral,
right? And if you mentioned to, don't leave, as you're saying, fight like hell within, and therefore push the issue, force them to kick you out of the church, and if they do that, then you can appeal to the hierarchy, because this was not.
There is a place. There's something in place already to deal with this.
Right.
And Father even mentioned outside the church exactly what that was, how that works. There's already grievance ability within the church. It's already set up. It's there. So you don't have to go on your own, get on your high horse, take your football, and go somewhere else, and show us your rump as you leave. Because you didn't live up to being the church. What? What? This is your judgment upon the Holy Church of God that you, not you, but have made this your idol that you cannot, your sacred cow you cannot let go of. Whether how good it is or how wise it may show to be later on. Don't know. But we don't know the future. We don't. And his father said, if they start coming and say, well, you can't give out Eucharist, what did he say?
That will break down the doors.
That's right. So the point is, he says, they're going to have to break down the doors because I'm going to be in there giving communion. So there is a time when the Orthodox Church will get spurred, where somebody's going to put a spur under our saddle enough that we're going to go, you know, there's that word again, spur under my saddle. And they will react. Now, I can't say that true for all Orthodox jurisdictions, as we know. There are some that I think are in doctrinal problems already. And when you get into doctrine, that's when bishops start calling each other. And I have no idea what's going on in these other jurisdictions. I'm not a part of it. So I don't know. So I'm not going to speak out of church or out of turn or out of class. All I know is there are some doctrinal issues that Orthodox churches seem to be some embracing that I find not just incorrect, but heretical. And therefore, we have to pray for them. Right. But again, there is no perfect Orthodox church. And once we start down this road of saying somehow that local church didn't meet up to my expectations of being the Orthodox church, let's put that into context a little bit. That the Holy Church of God, that local church, which is the fullness of the Orthodox Church, didn't meet up to my expectations.
Right.
We got more problems than we know what to do with right now. And I think everybody out there can understand. I commiserate with you. But is the church divided over Mass? Is this the thing to which the Holy Church of God must now be cleaved down the middle, which is the very same thing that Satan wants? We will fall and play right into his hands, right down his alley, and he'll be going, strike, way to go. You guys divided over this? It only took a little virus. Are you serious? That 2,000 years of doctrinal divides, and what did we do? Well, I'm not going to wear a mask, and I didn't want to. Really? Well, it means this and this and this and this and this. Maybe. You may be right. It hasn't been shown that to be yet. In some places, under some very demonic, I believe, government officials, it has.
Right.
But not here.
Right.
And I think that is showing a wake-up in those places, is showing a wake-up call to our bishops. If you don't think that they see the same things we see and are not concerned, you don't know our bishops very well. I can guarantee that our bishop is woke, if you know what I mean. He's taken the red pill.
Right.
He's pulled that thing out of his throat. And he's awake.
And so may I say something regarding the sort of response from today? Because today was the first day where masks were mandatory, especially to go into the sanctuary. I have two things. Father, mentioned during his homily how that kind of gave him a bit of a shiver to stare out into the congregation and see everybody's face covered. And
did he like it?
No, not at all. And
not at all.
But and then coming from another parishioner who was in there, who is feels the same exact way that I do. He decided to go ahead and wear the mask and went inside. And he said that usually when he enters the sanctuary and we began Divine Liturgy, that immediately he falls into almost a hypnotic bliss of worshiping God, and he can feel the Spirit. And I feel the same way. And then, we sing the liturgy together, the whole kit and caboodle, if you will.
And it's not there, is it?
Right, and he said he couldn't get into that place at all today because of
and here's why. And here's why. And this is something that, again, I think these again are pastoral decisions that are made on a very gut-wrenching level. And I don't have to agree with them. And I can be right, they can be wrong. But again, as a man under authority, I have to understand the ecclesial nature of conscience in the Orthodox Church. That it's not my conscience that's the thing. It is the ecclesial reality of the church locally. And I am called to maybe submit my conscience, not get rid of it, not go to sleep, not go numb, not acquiesce against my conscience, but to understand the relativeness of my conscience versus the reality of the church gathering.
Right.
Now, having said that, I have been under so much pain and hurt ever since this whole thing started, because I have been watching the church get torn apart. During Pascha this year, when the church was empty, I could hardly go. It was cruel to Father and to me, and he's going to be retiring. And this was his last Pascha. And he had to do it this way? Sorry.
No, it's fine.
It is evil, and we are being confronted by evil. But our weapons of warfare are different. Our weapons, we fight not against flesh and blood, even evil people, even evil government, even evil leaders. But we have an enemy, and we are so with each other that we allow the other enemy to, in many ways, win the game.
Right.
So this is why I really appreciated you last night and your teachable spirit. And you said, I have these knee-jerk reactions. I have these, and I said, I do too. I'm not a happy camper because I see what it's doing to the church. When I looked around and saw the faces of people, do you know the importance of the face in Orthodox theology?
Personhood.
It's how we express our personhood. Not put a mask on.
Right. And it's ironic.
And if you don't think that the enemy doesn't know this,
right,
you're crazy.
Right.
So I get it.
And related to the exact same point is right before I got the email about the mandatory mask, I was reading, based on your suggestion, which I do recommend for anybody who has a bit of a philosophical theological background, is Freedom of Morality by Jana Ross. And the first chapter is all about the difference between personhood and individuality or individualism, and how really, although we think of them as synonymous from an Orthodox theological perspective, they're actually antagonistic. Yep. And I can't help but think, again, how the mask destroys the personhood and makes everybody an individual. You see, everything's cut and dry. It's the same thing.
Again, do I agree with you?
Yeah.
Let me think. I'll do my la na 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 na.
Right.
Yes, right. But again, we always have to have in Orthodoxy sometimes a foot in both camps. to remain Orthodox.
Right.
And that is not my grace. That is the grace of being a bishop. And I don't have that chrism. I don't have it. It's not mine to do. I've seen his job. I don't want it. Do you? Yes, right. No. Very, very difficult. Bobby, you ever going to say something? No. Okay. Yeah, thank you. She wanted me to mention this. I know that you've got a lot of catechumens and seekers on this channel.
Yeah.
And they got to be going, are you joking? This is the Orthodox Church? Yeah, it is. But that does not mean it is not the Church of Christ. Doesn't make it not. It is the reality of living in the world, but not of the world, and the constant struggle that that brings. And to all of you, all I can say is I'm so sorry you're trying to come into the church during this time. This is unprecedented, and everybody's trying to learn as we go along. We don't know the future, not one of us. Wait a minute, that's not true. I had my future crystal ball in here somewhere. I gotta find it.
Right. Well, related to that, Subdeacon Mark, I may not know the future, but the only way to alter the future is to start to stand up right now for what we believe in. And so,
and I think again that if you give much more, and you're going to see the Orthodox Church stand up. I really do. I really do think that's the case, because historically she always has. Always has. Even in Russia, she stood up and got martyred for it. But she stood up. Can you name a point in time where the Orthodox Church historically did not go, enough is enough? And sometimes it happened after maybe I would have liked or whatever, but she stood up and went, no more.
Right.
Arianism took 100 years to beat down. 100 years. People were born, lived, and died, and still fought this thing. You know, iconoclasm popped up, and boom, now we got this big problem.
Right.
You know, and people are being killed over it. And yet the church stood up. And you're going to see also, you have to remember, we not only have bishops, we have a monastic community. And if you don't think the monastic community is watching this and praying about this and will inform the church about this, again, one thing we have to remember, Christ is still on his throne. Christ is still the head of the church. Christ has not left us in a spirit of fear. One of the things that it says, when the angel came, what did he say? Fear not, for I am with you. Fear not. And yet both sides of this are living in fear. We're all of us are wrapped up in some sort of fear. And we're tearing each other apart in fear. And yet Christ said, you know, fear not. And do not be afraid.
Right.
For lo, I am with you always. This is what our Lord told us. So it's not just a word. These are commandments. Do not be afraid. Put your fear behind you and be Christ to one another. Be that loving Christ to one another. This is what we're called to be. This is who we're called to be, regardless of all this other stuff.
Right.
And again, this world will pass away. This too shall pass.
Right.
One way or another.
So, in my opinion, I don't see these masks going, at the earliest, it would be in November after the election. And
well, again, but this too shall pass. The point is that Christ didn't get off his throne during that time.
I agree, but I want to move in a different direction. I have some thoughts
okay,
here.
Go ahead. Yeah, your show.
No, it's not that. kind of lost my my thread there.
Now
So
you're acting like me.
I
Quit it.
know. Um, so what was the last thing I just said? Dang it. Um,
You wanted to go a different direction from.
oh, so again, it's more than just because I've seen a few people in the chat say, "Well, just put on your mask. Just put on your mask." And I can do that. That's but what I'm trying to stand up against is it's more than just the wearing of the mask, as you already know. I know you know, but I'm trying to explain that where is the line between fear and courage? And of course, from an Orthodox perspective, this is where the whole conversation of martyrdom comes in. But on a societal level, the whole mandating of these masks isn't going to end until people stop doing it, because the real power is within the various persons that collectively make up that society or that community. And so I've been going out of my way for the last month to avoid these masks, and then take my businesses to places that will allow a sense of freedom and respect individual autonomy. And
agreed.
So
now, what if all society falls?
If all society mandates it?
No, all society falls to evil.
Well, I would say already we see the vast majority already.
No, what if all of it, and you have no opposition, and it's a done deal, fait accompli? It is done. Is Christ still on his throne?
Sure.
What is my response as an Orthodox Christian? What am I supposed to do with maybe people who want to come back and go, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. We didn't see this coming. You did. It's too late now. Because during persecution, this happens. People will come back and go, I was wrong to give the pinch of incense to the emperor's god. And I did it to save my butt and my family out of fear. What is the Orthodox response to all of this? It doesn't matter which side we're on, which side wins this, there's going to be people hurt. And there's going to be people feeling left alone, and those are going to feel like they've been wounded. It's inevitable. It will happen.
Right.
We've got to be ready for this in our spirits and say, okay, what is the most important thing in my life? What is it? My dog just came in.
God and family.
Corky. What?
I'd say God and family.
Well, it's even more than that. It is God in his church, in his people. That we make a commitment not only to God, we make commitment to the pastor and to the people of God in that local Eucharistic community. And when we make that commitment to that local Eucharistic community, we fight like hell inside for them all. Those we agree with, those we don't agree with, those who we think are just da-da-da, yeah, and not getting any of this, and those who are woke, those who saw it coming and are upset because nothing was done. And we have what Satan means for our destruction can be turned to a very good outcome. But what it takes, because what Satan meant for evil unto me can be turned unto that which is good. Every time he martyred somebody, this. Well, but what happened? Through that martyred life, many, many people came to Christ. It is always something that we have to understand that the evil one is always afoot. This isn't new. He has tried everything he can for 2,000 years to destroy the Church of Christ. So far, he's been unable to do it. And there have been great betrayals in the church during that time. Again, church history, if you're looking for the perfect church, it does not exist. Never has. From the very first days of the church, there was controversy. We've been reading about it in Acts.
Right.
But there has been no time in the church when it was really what you call peaceful and a refuge. The refuge is in Christ. The refuge is in Christ, in his church, made up of people who are saved, being saved, and will be saved, but are still as fallen and broken and striving like hell not to be.
Right.
But this is our walk. So if you're looking for a perfect place where you can be safe and secure, no matter what, I'm sorry.
Well, I think for a lot of people,
there's no place to go.
It's not about safety and security. And though
For some people it may be.
Right, but I'm just bringing up, and we don't have to go back down this because it's kind of rehashing stuff we've already talked about.
Again? Okay, let's go.
But it's about finding a parish that's actually going to fight this stuff. And that's why, again, so many of these people in this live chat are flocking to ROCOR because of their outward stance on a lot of this stuff. And so again,
and we don't know where this is going to go.
Agreed.
Again, nobody knows if ROCOR is going to be the place to go. It could be something that seems good, didn't work quite out that well, but the spirit behind it is what I've got to arrest.
Right.
The spirit behind doing that is not orthodox. The spirit, the motivation is individualistic, not communal.
Right.
It's my salvation. Me. That's not the orthodox mindset. I go to hell alone. I am saved communally. I am saved communally in the local Orthodox Church. And if it's not living up to your expectations, fight for it.
Right.
If you leave it, you can do nothing for it. You can't change it anymore. You have no voice to make it better, no prayer life to help it, no time on your knees to lift it up to Christ and say, Christ, have mercy upon it. Help us. Save us. Have mercy upon us. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
I don't know where I got that from, but somewhere.
Right.
But this is what we are called to do. We are called to fight here, now. Not acquiesce, but fight the good fight against the powers and principalities, not against our brothers and sisters.
Right.
And understand that our leaders are making horrifically hard decisions. And we might want to cut them a little slack. We might want to, as we said last night, believe the best about, we're called to believe the best about one another, not the worst.
Right.
Until they show us the worst. And even then, we pray for them. Right. But we believe the best about our bishops and leaders. We believe the best, that they have our best concerns at heart. Whether or not, and in my case, I disagree. But therefore, I still believe the best about my beloved pastor and the best about my beloved bishops. That they are doing their level best. And I don't believe these guys are asleep. I think that they are very, very, very awake. Our metropolitan has been called out by dialogue with, as they phrased it, orthodoxy and everything else because of his stance for traditional values. So
right.
we already know that our metropolitan ain't asleep
Right.
and is willing to take the heat. So I'm not real, and I also know stories of Bishop Anthony.
Right.
He ain't asleep. You know, he's in the fight.
Right.
And we've got to have some faith that these people are awake and not just doing this with no regard to what they see on the horizon.
Right.
And that's where I have to land as an Orthodox Christian. There's so many things. I did want to. I don't know how much longer we've been going on for quite a while here.
Yeah, we can wrap it up.
But what a wonderful talk.
Yeah.
And see, this is the thing that we love, and that is permitted in the Orthodox Church. We disagree. So, and this is something that the world needs to see.
Right.
We disagree. Cancel, 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 cancel. Or do we love one another? We are called to love one another. Little children, love one another. We are called, in 1 John, everyone that loves is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. We are called to love one another at the cost of ourselves. Cost of us. I died, you live. There you go. That's it. I died, you live. Yes. This is what we're called to. I lay down my life that you may live. That my brothers live. I don't run away from my brothers and sisters because they failed me. They failed me. They failed me. Therefore, I run away from them. I leave them to their demise. This is not orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is called at great cost, at great personal cost, to serve the living and risen Lord.
Right.
Can you think of any saint, martyr, ascetic that would not agree with me? Anyone? I'll wait. I got time. I'll wait. 2,000 years. We're going to be here a long time.
Right.
So anyway, if I could, I wanted to read at least one thing, and then you can wrap up however you would like.
Right. Well, we got some super chats, so we got some people that asked some questions. Go
ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, kind of provide a synopsis for those, because some people have joined in that weren't here earlier. But, again, my feelings about these masks and ultimately the sinister nature in which and the forces that are pushing that on society, despite their ineffectiveness, despite, in fact, they're a health hazard. We've seen people begin to attain fungal infections within their lungs.
Which is a real risk for me.
Right.
And as you know, I do kind of have an exemption for those who might have watched and see me take my mask off. I can't wear a mask a long time. You know why? At age 18, I was on a church work project, rebuilding a roof on an Indian reservation on a church. I contracted histoplasmosis, and it almost killed me. And it left my right lung deeply scarred. Plus the fact that I've been fighting for 6 months some sort of infection that won't go away. I'm not in the best position to be out playing around with coronavirus, but I can't breathe. You put a mask on me, and after 5-10 minutes, you'll see me pull it down, take some breaths and everything, because I can't.
Right.
So again, it's fairly useless for me.
Well, and ultimately, I think that's part of the agenda behind it is at a larger level is that we've already seen suicide rates, all these different things drastically rise since these lockdowns. And the
Yep.
whole intention of this being for public health seems to be, again, a bit fallacious, given what we're seeing with
It sure is.
the
I'll tell you
results of
this,
all
it
this
sure
stuff.
is inconsistent.
It's extremely inconsistent, but even though, and that's why I wanted to kind of give a synopsis and wrap all this up, even though I'm sure many of you guys are going to be in agreement with me in regards to the sort of sinister nature behind this, how they're a health hazard themselves, the irrationality of a lot of these stuff that's being implemented, the double talk between BLM protest and anybody else who does anything else, and how all of a sudden they're a carrier. The low asymptomatic transmission of this thing has been shown to be very rare. And so, despite all those things, and
Fear
why
doesn't listen to logic.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, and
fear does not listen to logic.
And logic being an energy of the logos, I think that makes complete sense.
And again, I see fear on both sides. So again, we all have to stop being afraid.
Well, it's more than how. I take a bit of umbrage at that framework, because how can you go also fight something and be in a sort of preparatory framework for what's to come? You know, you can do that without being afraid. But again, beyond semantics of maybe I said that or this, I'm not exactly on that same page as saying that that both sides are equal. No, I don't see that at all, because
I don't see as equal, because you know what side I land on the. So I don't say they're equal, but I think there are aspects that are there,
right,
and that have to be examined,
right.
Okay, so right. That's all,
right? Because
as far as what you're saying, are you going to get much of an argument from me?
No. And so that's what. Then the second half of what I wanted to say is where you helped me is, given what I feel regarding these masks, and I'm sure the majority of people in this live chat feel the same way, your point was to fight like hell within the church. And me right. and Stephen and other parishioners within our parish voicing our opinion, we found an accommodation. And
so fight.
I'm sorry?
So fight.
To fight, and therefore...
So fight. Keep going. Keep fighting.
Right. And certainly we plan on it. And so...
And our fight is with what?
Principalities.
Principalities, not people.
But it's... And so another thing related to this is that I saw an Amish man recently. He was asked...
Yeah, I love this story. Go ahead.
So people were going up to him. They were buying Amish goods. I forget exactly what he was selling at a roadside. He had all these his Amish family and Amish relatives around him, and they weren't wearing masks. Everybody in line was wearing masks. And they asked him, aren't you afraid of COVID-19? Why aren't you guys wearing masks? And he said, don't you realize, there's a reason why COVID hasn't affected the Amish community. We don't have television. And I think that speaks volumes in regards to even people that I have seen in my life. The ones who are most terrified are the ones who have self-isolated, and they spend all day watching the news and watching television. TV. Yes. Which then perpetuates the fear and perpetuates the feedback loop, and then perpetuates the likelihood of them even contracting.
That's the society we're living in right now.
Right.
And so we're trying to. I think again, we're trying to fight the good fight. I agree with that.
Right.
But there are, in my opinion, which I've tried to elucidate, ways of doing it and ways of not doing it that are more consistent with the Orthodox teaching of the church.
Right. And that's what you helped me with, is how, once you've understood where I'm coming from, in my opinion, giving voice and insight as to how then to fight for what I believe to be true, not contradict what I, my own conscience, but begin to express that within an Orthodox framework. And so far, at least we've had an accommodation and things are all right. So for everybody watching, then the idea is not to just get up and pack, but I think for some people that may be what they have to do, given on different kind. It may not be a mask issue. It may be something else. You mentioned that I
think the same principles in Orthodoxy apply.
Right. Which would be
wherever you are,
to fight like hell within the church and give
and love your brother and sister, and love them.
Right, and show a commitment.
Understand that if they're afraid, you don't belittle their fear.
Right, and
help them.
And so I think that is going to be helpful for other people. The difficulty is a lot of people are catechumens, and so they don't have any standing.
I'm
and
so
so
sorry.
to voice any opposition, who are you? And so there, that's
you're a very wise catechumen. Okay, so.
Well, not a lot of people aren't me. They may be watching the videos, or they may be listening to Dyer or Father Deacon Ananias.
They want to learn, and they don't know what the flip to believe.
Right.
And that's why I'm going, I'm so sorry. But again, we have been dealt this. This is something we dealt.
Right.
This is something dealt to us.
Right.
And again, we had no book to follow, no precedence on something like this. So we're going, as human beings.
Right.
Just because our bishops doesn't make them not human.
Right.
With the same frailties and the same mind and the same things that they got to deal with.
Right.
But again, I think we need to cut them a little grace, as we would want grace cut to us.
Right.
For the decisions they have to make.
Right.
And bless them. And please, above all, please pray for them.
Yes.
I don't mean that lightly. I mean, get on our knees and pray for our clergy, because they didn't see this coming. They didn't want this. This was not what they said. Hey, next year we get to deal with coronavirus. Ooh, cool. And we're going to see our churches shut down, and we're going to see people miss Pascha, and we're going to see people fighting with each other over Mass. It'll be great. You're going to love it.
Right. But
really?
And so I think you're with what I'm doing right now. So just to give context, given our situation, and again through your mentorship and our conversations, is there has been a accommodation at our church, and I'm just going to wait it out. And me and the other parishioners who feel the same way. And so we're just going to see where everything goes. Yeah. And that's all we can do.
I hope this has helped somebody out there.
Right. I'm sure it has. I'm absolutely sure it has.
Peace to your mind.
And especially in the way that we can go into dialogue, I think is very helpful. No, I do. I agree.
Right. I'm chuckling because I agree.
Right.
It is a joy, actually, because we're warriors. We love to tussle.
Right.
And my wife was the same way. You know my wife very well. And one of the things that she has always said, I'm a rock thrower. And I said, rock thrower? She said, yeah. You put out a theological argument that I go, And she goes, I'm going to throw rocks at it, see if it stands. Right. And so when we were first meeting, and I would be talking about things like the Theopauskite formula, and then she was like, I don't think I like that. Bing, 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 bing. These rocks came at it until she ran out of rocks and she couldn't knock it down. And then she went, okay, and then just embraced it. So so my wife's a rock thrower, so I've been doing this a long time with my rock thrower.
Right. So, and again, for those who may listen to the volume level of maybe our conversation, Subdeacon Mark and I love Subdeacon Mark. I tell him frequently how thankful I am for his friendship, him and Bobby. We spend time together. So that's why I asked him, can we go on and can we basically rehash our conversation of last night, but do it publicly? Which
took 2.5 hours last night.
Right. Because, again, I don't know how to respond to people who are messaging me who are in the exact same position. And then,
one of the limitations of this type of media.
Right.
It's one of the limitations.
Right.
I would much rather have I would much rather have you sitting there drinking your whiskey and me drinking mine.
Right.
Having our cheese balls and then just talking.
Right. And that's what we do. And I just, again, I thank you for your friendship. I almost feel it's providence. Pleasure. It's providence that we've been able to, just our parish and everything. And so me working this stuff out publicly, I'm willing to take the arrows that maybe I have a maybe American mindset at times, or I'm not acting in an Orthodox way, but
we learn.
Exactly. And I'm okay with being wrong. I don't have a problem. Same thing with the stuff I talk about on this channel. Sometimes I get things
wrong myself.
And so I don't have a problem of being wrong and being corrected, but I think by me doing it honestly and out in public helps other people.
Well, that's what we want. And people have lost, to a great extent, this ability. This is how society was supposed to work. This is how dialogue between disagreeing parties is supposed to work. And if you notice at the end, we're great friends at the end.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, but that's the way it was meant to be. That's the way human beings were meant to disagree.
Right.
And learn from one another. Open our ears and our hearts instead of just trying to choke off the other one so they can't say anything.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Right. Well, again, thank you. And so if you,
I did want to read one quote.
Yeah, go ahead and wrote. Well, we still have super chats.
This is by Dimitri Stanilou.
Okay.
And I thought this would be a great way to close off the evening, so I'm stealing it.
Yeah, go ahead and end the conversation. And then if you still have a few minutes, I know people were asking you questions in the super chat, so they'd like to get your feedback. But go ahead.
All righty.
Floor is yours.
But we'll just bring this formally to a close, and then we'll see what we can do for those who have questions. It's on communal salvation. Okay. And this is from the book Theology and the Church by Dimitri Stanilou. Nice Greek book. Anyway. Communal salvation. Christ did not bring us salvation so that we might continue to live in isolation, but that we might strive towards a greater and ever more profound unity, which has as its culmination the eternal kingdom of God. We see this reflected in the fact that we cannot gain salvation if we remain in isolation, caring only for ourselves. There is no doubt that each man must personally accept salvation and make it his own. But he cannot do so, nor can he persevere and progress in the way of salvation unless the manner of our salvation is communal. To be saved means to be pulled out of our isolation and to be united with Christ and the church, the rest of men. And I thought that was extremely apropos for what we're dealing with.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. I got thunder and rumblings over here. Patrick, do you hear that?
Yeah. Well, it was storming earlier over here as well. I'm a little bit south of you.
It's rocking and rolling outside my window.
So, first super chat, Nathaniel Hill threw in 1054. Reference to 1054, the Great Schism. Great ortho bro, and I feel lucky to call him.
Nathaniel.
Yeah, I feel lucky to call him a friend. We've actually spent quite a bit of time chatting, so thank you, Mr. Hill. Womp Womp threw in $10 and said, I appreciate the edifying content. Big thanks to David, and he said father, but I think he meant Subdeacon Mark.
I ain't a father, but we'll go with it. You know.
Well, biologically you are.
I am biologically, I am, but...
Eugen, one of our great ortho bros who's really doing a great job, Subdeacon Mark, organizing people online, spreading the faith, getting a lot of inquirers into Orthodoxy in a very good way. He's over on the island of Britain, but he said, has Subdeacon Mark considered starting starting a YouTube channel at all? I think many people would love that. God bless you both.
Well, with the good news, my brother, is we plan on at least doing one more chat on deification. So tune in.
Yeah, we're gonna do one on the triads, and a whole thing on Polymos. That's probably gonna go 2 to 3 hours. Who knows? But I mean, Subdeacon Mark, we have so many ideas. Every time we get together, we think, oh, we should do a live chat on that, and so there's so many topics. But thank you. Eugen, for
thank you, Eugen.
Yeah, for appreciating and blessing myself and Subdeacon Mark.
I do appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Another ortho bro, Mr. Nick threw in $20. Thank you very much, brother. He said, "Beers on me. Thanks for the great content, brother. Well, I will definitely split that.
I'm making him money.
I will certainly be buying a drink for Subdeacon Mark on your behalf. Thank you very much. Apacios threw in $5. He said, "Isn't the spoon the same as the garments touching Christ's body that healed people? It doesn't make sense to get sick from the spoon to me." And so maybe if you want to express your position on, people have talked about potential disease on the Eucharistic spoon.
It seems to have a life of its own, doesn't it? It just keeps coming back like, a bad penny, keep turning up. But I understand because it was something that was conversed a lot about at the beginning of the pandemic. The ecumenical patriarch, again, I'm a man under authority. And you don't get, except for Christ, much higher than the ecumenical patriarch. And he came out basically and said this: "We will be doing one spoon, silver or gold. Other than that, there's no more discussion. Thank you very much." That's a paraphrase. But the ecumenical patriarch came out and said, all you folks in the Greeks and everywhere else who are supposed to not be doing the spoons, and some are still doing it, against the expressed wishes of the ecumenical patriarch, that's their business. I cannot address them. All I know is Father Athanasius said, good enough for me. Because It's like, he said it, I'm under authority, I do it, and that's because it is a representative of the one cup. You can't have the one cup, thousands of spoons. Theologically, it goes, okay, so we have the one cup of Christ, and therefore from the one cup of Christ, we now dip it to you, thousands, it's like, or hundreds, however, dozens, doesn't matter. So it is to be done under the one spoon. And no, the cup of Christ is never a petri dish.
Haven't heard it phrased that way. That's funny.
Okay. And I will partake of it always by God's grace. That's just where I am.
Right. Evan Schultz also threw in $20. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. He said, by the grace of God, I am a member of a small parish in the woods. After much urging from myself and an older Russian faithful, we convinced our priest to continue liturgy and singing. Today was a blessing. So, thank you very much, Evan, and that's wonderful to hear. I wonder where exactly you are, that the fact that I assume California, with the fact that you said continue liturgy and singing, given the shutdown of churches and the order of no singing.
You notice what the Orthodox Church starts to do when they push too far? They start going, seriously? That's real. Seriously? And then they've had enough.
Right. Well, maybe Evan Schultz then in his parish can be a hope to us all. Yep. With a parish that, again, we will, I don't know, but is in the woods, but standing up against the state authority and telling them not to worship. Yeah. So thank you, Evan, and God bless you and your parish and your priest. Yes, absolutely. So, 5 pounds was thrown in by Neonor94. He said,
I know where he is.
He says hashtag.
He ain't in Kentucky.
No. He said hashtag eternal lives matter, and I think he threw that. He threw that in when you were talking about the sort of soteriological emphasis that a pastoral leader needs to keep in mind. And so I think he's much more in agreement with you, and so I thought that was a very clever and very beautiful, and that
was funny. We get it.
Yep. Hashtag.
Say no more. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah.
And you'll get that one. So anyway.
Yeah. Eternal lives do absolutely matter. Thank you very much, brother, for the super chat. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
CM threw in $9.99 and said, I've decided to convert. but I'm not sure which parish to attend. I have 2 OCAs and an Antiochian parish of equal distance. Leaning towards the Antiochian, but any added advice, or I think he's asking for your advice. There may be a misspelling. I'm not sure.
Okay.
What can we offer with help of decision? Thank you both. So what would be your advice?
Okay. First of all, I've been in both. Um, I was ordained in the OCA. Okay. Before it changed to roll call. But I was in the OCA for many years, and I love the people there. And there's a lot of good Orthodox Christians. There's a lot of good Orthodox Christians and bishops in both. I am uncomfortable the way the current OCA is headed. And I don't know your local particulars, and therefore I can't make a definitive suggestion to you. I would say visit both, because you've got to be comfortable with your pastor. You have got to be, again, what we talked about is you not only join Jesus, you join your pastor and the people. And you have to be committed to them. And stake your life with them. Put your post down and say, let's go fight this world together. And let's try to bring this world to Christ. Mm-hmm. In all the love and help we can. How that works out for you, I don't know. But I know that the Antiochian Church has been one of the churches that has been one of the more outspoken groups in all these discussions about gay rights, about fighting the plastic spoons and whatnot. The Antiochian Church has kind of been in the forefront of that. And so they've taken a lot of bullets because of that. But as they say, that's why we're here. You know, we take the bullets, we take the arrows, because that's who we are. That's part of us. So I'm very comfortable in the Antiochian Church. But again, I was in the OCA for many years, and I found Christ there in his church. So be prayerful. Lift them both up before God. Ask him. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds silly, but ask God to reveal to you where you want him to go. Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do in your church? Because they're both the church. And but what's so funny is to even have to make that decision in this country when for 1,800 years you just went to the Orthodox Church.
Right.
It wasn't a jurisdictional issue. And so it is kind of a cultural weirdness, right, for Orthodox to be even answering this question. But given the circumstances the way they are, that would be my advice to you.
And regarding the sort of multiplicity of jurisdictions within this country, I've heard some longtime Orthodox say they think that might be a good thing because of the nature of American culture and its sort of subversive elements, that if there was just one church in the United States, that they worry about it maintaining the faith given the context and how, you know.
So they're worried again, huh?
Well, they're thinking that the multiplicity in this country is probably a good thing in regards to the preservation of true orthodoxy.
Theologically, I can't go there. I'm kind of with Alexander Schmemann when his book Church World Mission, where he talks about that layer that has been added on to orthodoxy, which has caused a lot of turmoil and problems, and it's not borne a lot of good fruit. Right. Let me up to now. So, but anyway, but I do understand why you're saying that. I
right.
take the blue pill. So.
Yeah, don't take the blue pill.
No.
Another gentleman, Red Pill Raccoon.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
that about.
He asks, I officially became Orthodox this weekend. Congratulations, brother. It was difficult to deal with this, but I went through with it because I knew postponing would be even worse, and we still do communion properly. Thank you. And if I remember correct, I think I saw Red Pill Raccoon mention that he is in the state of New York, and so they have mandatory masks, and I'm sure they have social distancing.
You go, boy. You go, bro.
Right. So congratulations, brother. That's amazing. And then another our ortho bro also Nathaniel Hill threw in another he threw in $20.20, so 2020. Said Subdeacon Mark is right. Yeah, Subdeacon Mark is right to point out that it's a lack of faith in the church, but we know that branches can fall away and be pruned. As inquirers and catechumen, I think many are afraid of joining a pruned branch.
I understand, and you don't know that until it's done. And what happens to those who were in that pruned branch? What do they tend to do? They fall back into the bush. They fall back into the arms of the church. They are absorbed back into the faith. So I wouldn't. It's only if you continue to espouse things that are of the pruned branch. Example, just because it's the thing, the whole homosexuality issue. Mm. And I have friends of mine that have, in my opinion, gone to the dark side.
Right.
But having said that, that branch of the church where he's going right now has not been pruned. I think that this is extremely problematical for an Orthodox Christian to try to hold the defense of this. That ultimately the vast majority of Orthodoxy may put pressure upon that branch to recant or change. And it's happened. And if they don't, they will tell them, then you will be pruned, essentially. And for those in those groups, what happens is if you are not holding to these heresies personally, you are automatically brought into other places. Willingly, lovingly, caringly. You're just brought in. Mm-hmm. It's if you come in and since your branch was pruned and you go, no, I'm from that branch and I want to continue this, now you're going to have a problem because you were pruned because of that. So it's not something I would be afraid of, because none of us ever know ultimately until the second coming what's going to happen.
Right.
So we fight the good fight where we are. We be Orthodox. We live the faith delivered once to the saints. We have to know the Scripture. We have to know the teachings of the church. We have to be, in our own way, theologians, not necessarily like Patrick, but we have to be theologians in that we've got to know the basics of how this all works. How does Christ come to me? How do I receive him? What am I supposed to do? What does baptism mean? What does chrismation mean? What is just the basics. But be that theologian, and every time the priest or bishop opens his mouth, listen, learn, read. I know there's a concept. And you can tell by my library, his library. Guess what we do? Yeah. We read. I developed a quote years ago, and Bobby says she won't use it as my epitaph, but I say this not in pride, but I said, I am not a brilliant man. Therefore I read brilliant men, that I may glean from them the truth, so that I may uh, gain this from, I'm screwing up my own quote. Well, the heck with it. But you kind of get the idea.
Right.
See how this mind works? I even wrote it and went, bang. So, but it happens. But it's true. I'm not a brilliant man, so I read brilliant men. So I can glean from them, so I can take that into myself and be better. Oh, one thing it says, I I may be basically idiot, but I choose not to remain there.
Mm-hmm.
I choose not to remain in that type of mindset. I choose to get better. I choose to become smarter, spiritually speaking, as well as intellectually speaking, but that my heart may be converted daily, so that my heart is constantly being remade in Christ every day, so that when I fail, I'm more likely to see it, catch it, repent of it, go on. This is what our life is to be. And the other stuff, leave it to God. He's still in control. He's still okay. His holy church is still here. Last I checked, I was there this morning, and it was there, so I'm okay with that. But to be the kind of Christian that worries about his brother and sister, those who are lesser than him, those who don't have, to feed the poor, to help the homeless, to be the kind of Christian that has hands on and helps, and as well as praise. And this is what we all strive for, and I fail miserably at it at times, and sometimes I succeed. But I'm constantly in the battle. That's what I think where your focus should be.
Right.
Sorry, I mean,
no, that was great.
You ask me a question, I'll go on forever.
No, I know how you are, but no, that was great. Eugen threw in another £5. Thank you very much, brother. And this one's, he says, who is Subdeacon Mark's favorite monarch and why?
My favorite, probably Justinian.
Justinian, and why?
Well, his whole attempts at synergia in the church was inspired, but and flawed, as the church found out in many ways. But yet, what he wanted to do was try to bring the reality of Christ to this world, and that's why he's Saint Justinian. His wife Theodora was a little nuts, but but his legacy bore a lot of fruit, though not all of his concept proved out to be really helpful. But I think as far as monarchs go, he's pretty good. You know, he's I don't normally look at monarchs as far as people I emulate. For some reason, there's not a whole lot of them that are saints. I know some have been martyred and made saints, Nicholas II and others like that.
Right.
But it is.
And may I cut you off real quick? One of the things that I'm sure a lot of people in the chat have noticed that, just recently we venerated Nicholas II in Orthodoxy. And I was blown away by some of the things that I have been seeing on social media from Cradle Orthodox, some of them Russian, and some of them not, but this immense animosity to Nicholas II, yep. And talking about how they would privilege Stalin over him.
That though he did not order it, he is blamed for the massacre that occurred when thousands of people, women, children, were marching peacefully, carrying icon stands, trying to remind him of the church. And it turns out that he was not at that palace at the time, and his guard opened up and slaughtered a lot of people. Well, that tends to stick in your mind.
Right.
And they're going, and he's a saint? Well, when he found out about it, he was crushed, but there wasn't a lot he could do, but yet he's blamed for it because they were his guards.
Yeah. Eugen asked me the same question. I would probably say either Saint Justinian. I recently was looking into Saint Nicholas II, and what I admired is that he was apparently a very good father, and so that is something that I want to emulate, and so that is a reason why maybe just to be different from Subdeacon Mark, I would say Saint Nicholas II because
that's a sign.
Yeah. I want to be a good father, and so I find that to be highly respectable and something I want to emulate. Nathaniel Hill, listening attentively to your response regarding the pruning of fallen branches, he says, how then do we learn the correct theology from a heretical branch?
How do you learn correct theology from a heretical branch? You glean what you know to be true and you reject what is not. Okay. This is the call of every theologian and every historian and every Orthodox Christian. Just because something is said does not mean you go, nom, 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 nom. You have got to have the mind of Christ. You have got to develop it. You have got to read those whom we know are speaking the truth. You have to read the fathers. You have to read modern writers that we know have stood the test of time and that their writings have been accepted because they were speaking the truth. And you have to be very careful as to who you read. Because especially when you're new, you don't know everything. Right. Unlike me now at this point, where I've learned everything and I can be without fear and I can read anything I want. No, I still don't do that. I still watch very carefully who I read, and I have learned to recognize when people start going here and here and here, and I go, whoa, wait a minute. I've been around way too long and I know too much. And I don't care how many people, this is wonderful, you should read this. Again, Patrick knows this, I talk about center-cut theology, right. Center-cut orthodoxy. Too many people like to play around the fringes with people that are not accepted except in certain groups. And that certain group go, ooh, read this one, ooh, read this one. But I found that certain group may have some real theological issues that have not been dealt with. So I tend to, and again, not everybody loves everybody, but I'll tell you what, there are certain people, and I so wish that George Florovsky could be, his writings, they're out of print, and oh my God, and they're control. You guys in England work on this, okay? I understand that they're owned by somebody in England, right. And he's not releasing them.
Nope, they won't reprint them. It's ridiculous.
They won't reprint them, and we're like, and that's a shame. But there are people like John Meyendorff who. I don't care what you. There are people that like St. Vlad's and don't like St. Vlad's, and shut up. I say that lovingly. But that I knew Father John, and he was a man of eminent scholastic prowess and authenticity, and he was good at what he did and what he said and how. And at one time he was considered probably the leading Orthodox historian alive. So you tend to listen to people like that. And of course his friend was Father Alexander Schmemann, Father Thomas Hopko. I knew these people, or at least had met them. And you have to then also read the original sources. But you got to be careful, because when you're reading original sources, even as we were doing today in Athanasius,
right?
on the incarnation.
Right.
It's not so much what you said as what Sam Dem Fool said you said. And there are aspects, as we found in this book, that you go, made by people who are editing and commentary about this and trying to teach you what, instead of you reading it, what they think he said. And you've got to be very careful to recognize the difference. And again, the triads by St. Gregory Palamas, right here. John Meyendorff is the editor, and I trust him implicitly. He was considered the leading theologian and historian on St. Gregory Palamas before his death in 1992. The leading living historian on him. I trust what he says about him. I've read several books of his on St. Gregory Palamas, and he's got a bunch of them. But I listen very carefully to that which I know Christ to be because I've met him. I happen to have met Christ, and he lives within me. And there are certain things that he has revealed as you live in him that when people start to get on the edge, your stomach and your mind should start going and getting tight and kind of going, oh. That doesn't mean it's wrong, but it may have perked up your ears up. Pay attention. Slow down. Read slowly. Mm-hmm. Listen to what we know about the scriptures. What do the scriptures say? And if it starts looking like and smelling like that it doesn't seem to, then be aware. Beware of it. And don't just gobble it up because this was an Orthodox book that somebody recommended to me. No, never do it that way. Never.
Well, I think that basically wraps this conversation up. That's almost 2.5 hours. We have been...
Are you kidding me?
No.
It is dark out there, isn't it?
Yeah. But it was fun. Again, thank you very much for coming on and hashing this out. I guarantee you I will get messages from people saying how useful this conversation was.
I hope so.
In them navigating orthodoxy right now.
Even talking aloud about it sometimes brings clarity to people.
Right. No, I mean, you helped me last night in regards to try to figure out how to go about this in an orthodox manner. And so, right, as you recommended to me, and I recommend to everybody else, fight for what you believed. Don't I don't suggest compromising your values, but just voicing your opposition and fighting for what you believe to be true within the parish and church that you find yourself.
And remain humble.
Yes.
About it. You don't stand up and stand outside the church with picket signs and unfair. And you don't go pelting your bishops with letters and demanding this and explaining that and tattletaling on this and this. You're going to get nowhere.
Right.
You're going to have to be humble. You're going to have to sometimes win battles and lose battles.
Right.
But you still remain true to the faith of Christ, but be humble about it, unlike me. See this? Be very afraid. No.
All right. Well, I just want to again thank you and thank you everybody who has been supporting this channel and what I'm trying to do through this YouTube channel and larger. And if anybody is able or would like, I would suggest or recommend, if you're able, only if you're able, to potentially go into my website and just setting up the amount for a cup of coffee, $5 a month. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. If not, don't worry about it. I only want people who are in a position who can donate and contribute. But thank you guys just for being here. Thank you for everybody who has commented.
Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity to try to that you offer me to bring hopefully some clarity and some peace to some people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, Subdeacon Mark. Thank you for
You're
everybody.
very welcome.
And as until next time, as always, God bless.
Bye.
All right.